Hey, my friends, thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Real Life Talk. Appreciate you guys so much for taking the time to be here, to watch, to listen, however it is that you're receiving this podcast. Appreciate you so much. So, thanks for all that you do. I'm excited for this interview, to present this interview to you with George A. Wood. George is a pastor, author, speaker. He's a recovered addict and suicide survivor. He's an activist and trauma consultant. He leads people in the areas of faith, addiction, mental health, suicide prevention, and trauma recovery. Just an amazing guy. His story is absolutely incredible. He's the author or co-authored the book, The Uncovery, Understanding the Power of Community to Heal Trauma, that we've talked about in this podcast several times. And it's a book that I really, really believe is a game changer. I think you should get it. I think you should get a copy for you and a copy to give away on Amazon or on George's website. We'll share some links and information with you at the end of the podcast episode here. Full disclosure, this is a pre-recorded episode. George and I recorded this conversation ahead of time. And we talked about some things I wasn't really planning on, but it was a really, really, I think, good conversation and important conversation. And we talked about some of the implications of when a leader falls, when a pastor, minister, somebody in a leadership position, a prominent position, commits some kind of a sin or falls into an addiction, sin habit, struggle, has some kind of a moral failure of some kind, or whatever the case may be. That what do we do? What should our response be in grace? What should our response be as the people of God, as leadership coming around this person? That was a pretty big part of the discussion. We talked about some other things in the conversation as well, but it's a grace-filled conversation about helping lead people through recovery and helping people be restored in their lives. And so I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. Appreciate you guys so much for being here. Please consider subscribing to the podcast on whichever platform works best for you. Leaving a comment or a review is super, super helpful so that we can keep making sure these episodes get in front of more and more people. So thank you guys so much in advance. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the podcast for the first and hopefully not the last time, George A. Wood. Well, awesome, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate you for coming on, and it's really cool. First of all, just to finally meet you. I've heard a ton about you, and your co-author for the Uncovery, Britt Eaton's been on the podcast a couple of times, and so we've talked
Yeah.
about you a bunch. And I've heard, in reading your book, I've heard a bunch of yours or read a bunch of your story, and
hmm
I've heard some of your story even on some other podcasts and stuff like that. But it's really, really cool to finally just make that connection here face to face with you. So thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, man. I think the last time I was supposed to come on with Britt and something, I don't remember what was going on, but something happened. So I'm just glad to finally be here. So it's like, I don't ever,
I appreciate it, man.
I think, try to not bail on commitments. And so I think, unfortunately, you were the only one that, like, during the whole early stages of promoting the book, that something came up and I just couldn't make it. So, anyways, I'm here. I don't,
It's
for better or worse, here we do it. Yeah, for better or worse, I'm here
it's great,
today.
man. It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It's just building the suspense. That's all. It
Well,
would be really, really cool at some point to do that with both of you guys. I would love that. Yeah.
yeah. What's kind of, I will tell you this, and maybe this, I don't know, be exciting for you. So I've been on a sabbatical for 3 months, and
Mhm.
well, a little bit longer, and I haven't done anything publicly until this week. I spoke in front of the Hillsborough County Family Court System
Mm.
on a topic that's I'm very passionate about. But this is my first podcast. In wow, I can't believe this, but it's really been almost 4 months.
Wow.
And I mean, I've been doing my own podcast show for the last two and a half years. So it's been 4 months, and it's the first time I've went that long. So here I am.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're back. Glad you're back in action.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Hopefully doing hopefully doing better than I was right before I left. Let's just say that.
Okay. Well, look, man, There's a myriad of things that I would love to talk to you about. I am curious since we were just kind of talking about it. I
Mhm.
was going to kind of maybe save this for later in the conversation, but I'd love to know because I know you've kind of had a major life shift, right? And even a major shift in terms of ministry and focus and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
what is going on right now?
Now, it's funny because
Or
we
can you share? Or
oh,
are
yeah,
you in a
yeah.
place you can share everything, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Part of why I removed myself from the public eye, was because I don't have any problem sharing, and sometimes I should. So so
Sometimes you share too much.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I think, we all have different personalities. Mine tends to be one that externally processes, and I'm a fairly highly emotional person. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. Um, I'm a recovered drug addict and alcoholic and suicide survivor who came from a highly traumatic past, and I come from a very volatile family that, um, you know, love language is screaming. So, um, I, yeah, I'm just going to say what's on my heart and what's on my mind. I have a tendency when I'm not in a good place to be very self-destructive,
Mm,
and I didn't want to self-destruct. I was with my spiritual father yesterday, and he's like, "I'm just so grateful that you didn't just blow the whole thing up, and that
wow. Wow.
you didn't do something so incredibly stupid that you ruined your legacy and your life, because so many pastors do that."
Wow.
Um,
George,
so
on that, can I ask you a
yeah,
question? Not
go
to
for it,
cut you
dude.
off, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the Uncovery, at least the book that you
Mhm,
wrote and co-authored with Britt Eaton. The Uncovery, for anyone who's not familiar, it's understanding the power of community to heal trauma. And I think you should like stop listening right now and go download the book, get it, get the Kindle, get the whatever version of the book you can. I think everybody should read this book, whether you are in recovery from trauma or you don't even know how to begin dealing with trauma. If you know somebody in your life who needs, who you want to walk with, or even if you don't, because I guarantee you at some point you will.
mhm.
And I just think it's a book that everybody, and definitely every Christian, every believer, should read. I think everybody should read this book. I can't. I'm such a big fan, dude, and I just can't say it enough. So
Thank
I'm just
you.
gonna keep saying it.
Okay.
Every 10 minutes, I'm gonna pause and just be like,
Wow, man.
"Get the
That's
Uncovery." No, but so the question, the reason I interrupted you, not just for that,
no, no,
um,
it's
I
yeah.
I
Shame, but I'll
I
take every shameless plug I can get. So
Yeah, there we go. That's yeah.
yeah.
But look, dude, so it's understanding the power of community to heal trauma. And you were
Mhm,
just very, very open and transparent right there about what you said. You said, still, I have this tendency to become very self-destructive when I get into a not so good place
mhm.
in my mind, with my thoughts, all of that. And so um how did how do you like are you at the point in your life now where for you the uncovery journey of like the power of community and surrounding yourself with people that can help you through that journey, is that something that you would say like is that easy for you to do, or is that something that's a struggle for you to do, to go to other people when you know you're in a not so good place in your mind where maybe you could self-destruct, or you could whatever fall into some kind of a downward spiral situation? Is it something that's become like normal, natural, easy to you at this point to seek out, those of you, your spiritual father or those that are around you in community, or do you still kind of find that tendency to like hide and you need to make a conscious effort to push yourself to do that?
I don't hide, um, at all, and
It's
so
awesome.
I don't struggle with telling anybody my problems. And this is part of, like, I think coming out of this, what I'll be teaching a lot on is, um, I just said I was an 8 in the Enneagram. That's a challenger if you don't
Hmm.
know the Enneagram. Um, I am a pretty strong, self-willed individual, and most of the people in my community and in my life, I lead. And so,
Mhm.
I think what happens, um, you have pastors that are afraid to tell anybody they're struggling, but then you have a pastor like me who's not afraid, but the people just feel very ill-equipped to help. And
Mm.
so they
Okay.
hide. They end
Wow.
up hiding because they're like, man, you know, we love you and care about you, but we don't know what to do. And so that hurts us. So we hide. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's a struggle to help a leader. So the way I pastor, the way I lead is different than, a church or something. These are people that I've been to hell and back with, going through their
Yeah.
recoveries and their sobrieties and their mental breakdowns and what have you, and going through life with. And so, sharing with each other is a daily practice. But when my life starts to, really show cracks and to struggle, they don't they feel ill-equipped to handle that. And
Wow.
part of that is just my personality, and I'm learning. I learned a lot over the last 3 months. Definitely still have more to learn, but I'm learning that there are things I could do to help the process along. Um,
Yeah.
there's definitely ways I could phrase things differently, and a way of, humility in which I could receive things. So, it's been a big learning process there. But in my
Mhm.
situation, I think what was a bigger part of the issue was I lead or was leading a recovery based ministry. Okay. And at the same time, I have the Timothy Initiative, which is a recovery in person,
Mhm.
in house, 24/7, ministry, of people coming through heroin addiction and all kinds of hard life situations. So there's that. But then I have the Sober Truth Project, which is sort of where I saw my life going 4 years ago, but was called back into TI because of a
Mm.
situation that happened with my leadership. But I was really supposed to be out of there already. And then the book. And so I'm off doing, I think we did 15 interviews over 6 weeks. And it's like this, dude. Like right now, you and I are talking in this space, 2 foot by 2 foot, right? I don't know
Sure.
what's happening 2 foot to your left or 2 foot to your right. I don't.
Just
I don't know
chaos,
what's
bro. Just
right,
total
right.
chaos.
But that's all. We're in this little space, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, I'm in my space, and I'm trying to act like I got it, my crap together because I just wrote this book. But on the other side of my space, all hell is breaking loose. I got people
Mhm.
relapsing in their houses. I got the electricity be shutting off on one because we don't have the power enough money to pay the power bill. I have the homeless people coming in and attacking my outreach workers in the front. So and I'm responsible for all of it. And then I
Mm.
got to, that's in my office, but then I leave to go home, and I live in the inner city. I live in a very high crime area intentionally to be a light to the darkness there. But in my house, it's, we had, over the last year, we've had major gunfights in my front yard, and um, different things happened to my wife. And I mean, dealing with all of this. And I just want to focus on this interview I'm doing with whatever news station somewhere across the country, but
Right.
I'm struggling with all these other things. And I hit end on that, record button on that podcast or whatever. And I got to figure this other stuff out. And,
Mm.
tack on the whole, I, was not supposed to be doing all of that. I'd raised somebody else to be doing all that. And in this ministry, it's like sometimes people have a failure. And so they had to take a back seat for a while. And so I was thrust
Mhm.
back into a full-time position of being an executive director, um, and a board of directors that I had brought on to help the other guy, and not me. And we started to clash because they wanted me to be a certain way, which I was supposed to be out of there. I'd done it for 14 years and I was going to still be, living in the inner city and still be working, with Sober Truth Project. And we just finished a second book and I have a third book coming. And so I'm clashing with them. So it's like, I think where people start to really crumble, and some people can handle more than others, is when the walls start to close in. And there's a reason why we say, you don't ever put, a wild animal with their back to the wall because they're going to attack. And
Yeah.
and and we're the same way. And so when all of the walls start to close in, and Duke, and like I said, it's the first podcast I've done since I came out of this. I'll tell you, I woke up one day and did not like what I saw in the mirror. And,
Mm.
and there's the hypocrisy that I felt inside my heart for the way that people read the book and then they're thinking they're talking to. But then there's just the mere fact that I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the husband I was. I didn't like the father I was. I didn't like the friend that I was. And I didn't like how I felt internally ever so much like I did years ago when I wanted my life to end. And that
Mm.
feeling was back. And I was just like, what the hell has happened? This is supposed to be this amazing year. I'm a published author. People try their whole lives to do that. And here I have that. And I thought this was going to be happiness
Yeah.
and joy. And I'm
Yeah.
freaking miserable. And every other aspect of my life is
Mm.
crumbling before my eyes. And I had, uh, no choice but to just be like, I need to take a step back and connect with God and
Mm.
figure some stuff out and reprioritize. And number one priority going into it, of course, was my own centering and mental health, but I had to fix my marriage.
Wow.
I had to. And you know, my wife is an incredibly beautiful, strong woman who runs her own ministry and organization. And what I'd found is over the year, we're not the standard biblical version of submission and authority. She's the little helper by my side. It's like, hell no, man. She's going full force this way. I'm going full force that way.
Come on.
And so we were like two business partners going side by
Right.
side,
Right.
mainly, mostly. And so many things over the last decade had happened, things like with politics and the church crumbling politically, all these issues that had, like, where do you stand? We hadn't even connected on that. And
Mm.
I just knew internally I had to get away and I had to fix my marriage first and
Wow.
foremost. And I mean, I didn't cheat on my wife or anything like that. I mean, it was just purely like,
Yeah.
when my wife looked at me and said, "Do you even like me?"
Wow.
That's freaking wrong, man. That's just like,
Yeah.
what do you mean, do I like you? I
Yeah.
love you. Yeah, I know you love me, but do you even like me? Because I don't feel like it.
Wow.
And dude, if you don't sit your ass down after that, then you got a
Yeah.
problem. You got a serious
Yes.
problem because nothing else is worth that. Nothing else is worth losing your marriage and your family. Nothing. No
Come on.
church, no book, no ministry position, nothing. It's worth nothing if you lose that stuff. And so if your wife is looking at you saying, "Do you even like me?" You need to sit your ass down and let the rest of the stuff crumble, but fix
Mm.
that part of your life. And I'm proud to say that the past 6 weeks to a month to 6 weeks has been the best we've ever been, my wife and I, the
Mm.
happiest. Just It's just been amazing, and we still have work to do, of course. Um, but I'm proud to say that part has come a hell of a long way, and
Yeah.
enough so that we both could be okay with me stepping back somewhat into you know whatever public ministry, if that's what we call it
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah. Well, dude, oh man, thank you so much again. I mean, thanks for in the midst of all that, thanks for doing this. Thanks for being here. I'm so glad to, just see you here and where you're in this place where you have this, testimony to stand on to say, you know what, like I can say for the past 6 weeks that this is the best we've ever been. And I think it's awesome, bro, that you're living it. You're living what you wrote about. You're
Yeah.
living what you've been teaching other people to do, and we can see that happen where it's like, hold on, because sometimes, and this happens to all of us, on different levels, different stages of life, and then I think the way we respond is different based on the circumstances. But for all of us, I mean, there's going to be times in our lives where we have to pull back from something. There's going to be times where we have to like get in there and do the work that we don't want to do because it might seem
Mhm.
like such a mental barrier between like where we are and where we need to be, or where we are and what we need to do to quote unquote fix the problem that we're
Mhm.
seeing going on in our lives. Like you said, there's stuff going on, it feels like things are falling apart, but in the midst of this, the most important thing in my life, my marriage, it's like if I don't do something about this now, I might end up with we might end up with some major problems, even worse down the road. And even in spite of all that, like, or apart from all of that, I mean, this is what matters. This is the person that I love. And so
Mhm.
I just think, man, like practicing what you preach and just getting in there into like those nitty-gritty moments and saying, you know what, like I've got to do some work here. I think, bro, that first of all, it takes tremendous courage for anybody at any stage of life to do that, to recognize, to pull back, even in the midst too of like I would imagine the spiritual struggle, the mental, psychological, emotional struggle of like waking up and recognizing, you know what, like I've been in ministry all these years, I wrote this book, I'm helping these people, and yet these are the thoughts that I'm waking up with that are still in my head. What gives, you know what I mean, like because the
Mhm.
devil is such a freaking pervert that
Mhm.
like he just wants to take anything, like any little string that's hanging off, and then
Yeah.
just keep pulling it. And if we let him, he'll just keep doing it, he'll keep lying. And we can, you know like none of us are beyond this stuff if we're not staying in community and recognizing the grace of God, the goodness of God, his faithfulness. And we're not willing to allow him to work on our hearts even when it seems like it's hard. And just if we're not what I'm saying. So it's like, um yeah, all that, because like having that thought pattern of like, man, I'm preaching this stuff, I'm doing this stuff, I'm teaching this stuff, and yet I'm struggling with it myself, or I'm
Mhm.
struggling with where I'm at right now. And again, I just think it's such a common normal thought. I don't know if this is what it was like for you, but I think it's a common normal thought that I've had, and it's like, well, if you know I must not be qualified to do this anymore, or I must not be good enough for this if I'm over here struggling with it as well. And it's such a, first of all, it's a lie.
Mhm.
um but second of all, I think it's something that a lot of people in ministry struggle with that. And if we buy into that lie, if we
Mhm.
buy into that lie of like perfection, or buy into that lie of having to look a certain way and be a certain way, or buy into that lie that says we're not allowed to have struggles, and if we have struggles then something must be wrong with us, or we're not as good as somebody else, and whatever it might be, bro. But anyway, I just so admire the fact that you're living even what this book, The Uncovery, talks about, of staying in community and being willing to make those hard decisions and take those steps of faith in a direction where you say, even if I might not outwardly be advancing, like that right there, bro, could just seem so hard for so many people
Mhm.
to say, like, I'm advancing right now, but I need to take a step back to deal with some stuff that's going on in my own life. And yeah, I'm just saying, man, like a lot of people could look at that and say, that makes me a failure, or that makes me worthless, or that makes me whatever. But it's honestly, it's the opposite. It takes so much courage. And I just love the fact that you're living it out. And I think that it's a really admirable thing that you've been doing what you've been doing, so that you can have a stronger marriage, stronger relationship with God, stronger, and you can be stronger to, help those that you're helping in your life.
It's Thank you. But it's so numbing when so many different things are happening. We lose sight of how we're feeling internally and why we're feeling that way. And so
Mm, yeah.
we're disagreeing with you, you're fighting with your wife or disagreeing or not on the same page with your wife.
Hmm.
For in my marriage, part of what is complicated is we don't fight. So it's one thing if you're yelling and screaming at each other all the time, okay, maybe but we don't do that. And so it's more that silence, which is just as bad. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely just as bad. But it's easy to just be like, we're okay because we're not yelling and screaming at each other. Right.
True.
So but you're not connecting, and then you're having issues at work, and then it's just like so easy to just become numb to what is actually happening. And so yeah, we're going to God and we're saying, God, uplift our spirits, or we're crying out to God, but we're not actually crying out to God for your marriage or for your situation with your coworkers or the people you're leading. Or so you're not really identifying the problem. What you're doing is this blanket, like, statement, God, make me feel better. um
Hmm.
and it doesn't work like that. you have
Yeah.
to you have to pull away and, like, do the old psalm prayer of search my heart, O Lord, and reveal to me. But you got to sit around and wait for him to tell you. It's not a prayer that you do, and it's like, I prayed the prayer. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
does not work that way. But before you know it, you start to realize, okay, life is a bunch of stages or phases or whatever, and they all have to align in order for you to be firing on all cylinders or whatever. And so I could feel like I'm miserable over here, but if I don't realize that it began with being not on the same page with my wife over here, or
Mm,
not fulfilled over here with my work, it's like you got to get to what it is that's leading you there. And as like a spiritual formations guy, a spiritual director type person, I know that. But you just, when it's you, you stop thinking that it's
yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
and I think part of it is, um we don't have a culture of support in these things. So we have the pastors or leaders, the Ravi Zacharias of the world, that were obviously struggling,
Right.
but weren't in a position to tell anybody. And
Right.
then, so many leaders are like that because they fear the old, you're not. I like what you said. You said you the pastor, feels I'm not qualified anymore. But I almost think most pastors are so prideful, they're not thinking that. They're
Oh,
thinking,
really?
well, I counsel a lot of pastors. I'm saying that from a position of experience.
Wow.
But but it's more they fear the leaders around them saying you're not qualified.
Wow.
Because even if I don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
qualified, I can put myself into a state of disillusionment where I'll just keep working really hard till I requalify myself. But
Hmm.
if I put the power in your hands and you tell me you're not
Right.
qualified,
Right.
well, I can't do anything if everybody around me starts to say I'm not qualified. If
Wow,
just
dude.
if within me I think it, I can just work harder. I can try to pray harder. I can whatever, typically
Yeah.
involves being
Yeah.
incredibly busy, busying myself to build myself to a point where I feel qualified again, or um, basically, I hate to say this, but I feel saved again.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
gain my salvation somehow
Yeah.
because I've fallen away, and we just have to know that that's just
Yeah.
it's just a lie, man. It's a lie. But the reality is, yeah, there are cultures in which you tell anybody your weakness, somebody wants your job.
Right. That's true.
It
Yeah, and
is.
I think the goal a lot of times with that, what you're saying is like even if because it's one thing if you're living a certain kind of a lifestyle, you're doing things that you know are wrong, or you're stuck in something that you know you shouldn't be doing, and your goal is, you could have a couple different things. Your goal could be, I want to be free of this because I know it's not the right thing for me. Or your goal could be, well, I want to keep doing this, but I want it to be covered up so that no one else finds out about it. But I think that if you're in column A, where it's like, I really don't want to be doing this, I want to be free. I think deceptively, what can happen with a lot of people is they kind of have this goal in mind of, I'm going to work on this just on my own, and I'm going to work to get free from this before anybody finds out about it.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
so that becomes such a deceptive thing, and then unfortunately, in I would imagine, the vast majority of the time, maybe sometimes people escape that way and just kind of grit their way out or whatever. But I think more often than not, it just gets worse, because really at the end of the day, we're just deceiving ourselves that we
Mhm.
don't need help with where we
Yeah,
are, with where we are.
but yeah, you just nailed it. And I've escaped sometimes in the past where, like,
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stop doing this, and I've been able to do that, but it takes a chunk of
Yeah.
your soul, and so it does. It does. It
Yeah.
takes a chunk of
Yeah.
your soul, and eventually you may get out of it that time, and but it takes a little bit out of you each time, and I don't care how much time you put in between it. It's the guy who has the affair, ends the affair, recommits to his wife, and goes 10 years
Yeah.
and never tells anybody, but he's honestly been a great husband in that 10 years, and no more affairs and no more lusting and no more flirting
Uh-huh.
and none of that. You're going to tell me that that didn't take part of his soul?
Right.
It
Right.
did. It did. Because
Yeah.
there's that something that's in there. And believe me, that there's plenty of wives that, like, I don't want to hear about it because it's going to take a part of mine. It ended. That's behind us.
Mm.
And that's, listen, I'm not here to tell people what the right thing to do in those moments. I'm just saying you're not going to be walking in wholeness, right? And
Yeah.
and over
Yeah.
time, you just, there's only so much a person can take,
Hmm.
before they start to crack under the pressure. And
Yeah.
that's this whole idea of the book in the uncovery is like, recovery is for everyone. And if we could get that through our minds, then we could begin to understand empathy on a whole new level. Then it's not
Yeah.
as big of a deal if you tell somebody you're struggling. It's not as
Yeah.
big of a deal. I had this talk with my spiritual father yesterday. It's like, the listen, struggling with something does not negate the finished work of the cross. I'm a finished work of the cross guy, right?
Yeah.
But there's sanctification and there's salvation. And so there's definitely, and I apologize if you're one of them, because I think everybody's entitled to their beliefs, but there's people that are like, listen, everything was finished on the cross. You shouldn't deal with any issues.
Hmm. Right.
That's the sin. The sin is you're still stuck in the old man. And
Hmm.
and there's a logic that goes around in there, but the reality is, listen, I'm not perfect. And the finished work of the cross did happen, is happening, is true, but I still got issues that I've got to work
Sure.
out. And I can't be afraid that if I'm going to tell someone I'm struggling with pornography, or I'm struggling with wanting to drink, or I'm struggling with whatever I'm struggling with, that you're going to throw at me, well, you're just not putting it on the cross, and you're just not doing this or that. It's
Hmm.
like biblical truths, yes, but reality is I need somebody to walk alongside me and walk me through something, and to show me that love of God that I don't feel in my heart at the moment. And
Yeah.
it's just a whole different level of empathy that a lot of people, I don't think they necessarily want to walk in, because it takes a lot
Yeah.
of effort.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's really, really good. Um, in the case of, let's say, because we've been kind of talking about it a little bit, in the case of a pastor, minister, somebody in ministry who
Mhm.
is struggling with something, whether it's pornography or some kind of closet addiction or closet sin habit or whatever it might be, but struggling with something that they're afraid to bring out, they're afraid to tell somebody about it, they're afraid to talk about it, put it on the table, anybody, whether it's their spouse, close friend, leadership team, whatever, they don't know what to do with it. and so they kind of keep it hidden because yeah, maybe they're concerned about their job, they're concerned about, and it could even be on the level, like if this comes out, I'm probably going to lose my job as a
Hmm.
pastor. I'm going to lose my position, which means my family, we're not going to have income, we're going to have whatever it might be. So there's all kinds of fears, different things, you're concerned about the outcome. And I do think a lot of it is what you said, the pride issue of just not wanting anybody to know, because I want to maintain the symbol that I am as somebody who's not struggling with these things or whatever. What do you think about, like, do you think that the problem there in a scenario like that, which is a very common scenario, do
Hmm.
you think the problem there is like the person, the minister, the person with the issue is like, is the problem fully with them? Or do you think it's like there's also a problem that he feels that way in the first place? Like there's a systemic problem that he feels that way in the first place, that he can't be open and honest about his struggles, because of the what the consequences might be, or because of just that feeling. Obviously I do think there is an over pedestalization that happens of a lot of people. We put them up and we say, well, because they're in this place, then we need to expect that they're never going to have any struggles of their own, right?
Hmm.
And so I just wonder,
Yeah, great
how
question.
much do you think that problem is on the side of that pastor, or minister, or whoever, and how much of it is just like a systemic thing that we have to deal with, where we create, as you said, that culture of support, where there can be the freedom to express things and talk about things that might get us into trouble.
No,
So,
it's a really great question, and I think that this is where we have to fall into ambiguity, where there's a little bit of truth on both sides,
mhm,
and because it can be either. I do believe the majority of the time it is the systemic problem, because
mm,
I don't I can't speak that every system that is perfect the person's going to confess. I can't,
right,
because you're always
right,
going to have that guy who's like, I'm just not ready to be done with this. Um,
absolutely.
but I do think we have to take a long, hard look at ourselves as leaders, um, and say, culturally, over the years, it has been um, an issue systemically, and it's like that in recovery overall. So for so long, we've wanted people to recover in isolation or separation,
Mm,
when we know that the answer to addiction is connection. Did you
mm,
know that the
it's good.
answer to shame, right? And let's face it, shame is what you're feeling when you're doing something you don't want to.
Yeah.
The answer to shame, and I learned this in my marriage counseling, so I can't even claim it on my own. The answer to shame is intimacy, period.
Wow, that's
My
so
marriage
good.
counselor taught us that, and I was just blown away. I was like, that is
Mm,
so on point. Shame keeps us in hiding. Intimacy draws us out of hiding and into relationship.
wow.
What we fear in shame is to be disregarded and cast away. Intimacy reminds us that we can't be. And that is just so powerful, right? So I think systemically we've got to do, and I'm talking about church cultures, community, Christian cultures as a whole. Um, and obviously, anybody watching or listening, I'm not speaking to every single one. That would be impossible. I don't know every single church or every single culture, but in the majority, we need to do better at understanding intimacy than we do judgment. And that
Wow.
means giving an atmosphere for people to come out and help us help them.
Wow.
Now, if I could, I'd like to pose another question to me from you, which would be, um, which would be, I would be
Bro, if
asking
we could
me,
just do that the whole time, my job would be so easy, and I'll just
right on, brother. But would be, why, a person who's doing something that they don't,
Mhm.
let's say their system, their culture is perfect, but they still don't want to come out with it. Is it, you know, just that they like what they're doing so much, which is sometimes true? Or
Mhm.
is it that they literally don't understand why they're doing what they do? And so it's a whole nother level of vulnerability to
Yeah.
um telling you why I do. It's like one thing if I say, listen, I've been drinking behind everybody's back. I just really love the feeling it gives me. I understand it. There we go. But if it's something like I am trying so hard and I don't know why I'm doing it. So a lot of times, if a person doesn't understand the thing that they're doing, they feel like they're broken or deficient in a way beyond what they're doing. So if I'm looking at
Yeah.
pornography or whatever, I understand that as sin. I understand that as wrong, but deep within me, I know I don't want to do that. And so what is broken in me that is making that happen? And so that's a whole nother layer of of trust or security a person needs to feel. And so we have to so it's like I believe we have to help cultures be more accepting and understanding and to provide an atmosphere for people to confess, but we need to do a better job of helping people understand themselves on a deeper, more
Mhm.
cellular level, which is on Monday I spoke in front of the Florida court system and spoke on adverse childhood experiences and the effect on us long term as we grow. And a lot of that ties into pastors and leaders because often we become pastors and leaders out of a form of brokenness that we don't even
Mm.
realize we're coming out of. And
Yeah.
that is also part of why we end up in sin, if you want to
Wow.
call it sin, because the truth is, Duke, we all have needs, and that's normal. But we all try to fill those needs with different things, and a
Mhm.
lot of times, if our brokenness is leads us to have a need to be important, or a need to be seen, or a need to be heard, or a need to be the person who solves everything. Um, it came from a brokenness that because that's not from God, right? And so
Yeah.
a lot of times we could be pastors and doing a fine job, but eventually that need isn't getting filled. And so we look for other ways to fill it. And so
Mm.
I think we need to help people understand them understand themselves on a deeper level and understand how to be empathetic on a whole new level.
Wow. Wow, man. If I could ask you this question, because you
You,
know, this is something that I think about a lot, and I don't really know for sure what the right answer is, and I think it probably varies from, well, for sure, there's variation from situation to situation, but you know, one thing that I do see is when uh, whether it's because a minister or leader has been doing something, you know, that's been hidden, some kind of
Mhm,
a sin issue, moral failure, something, they come out and either they bring it up, they confess, or they're found out before before it gets there. You know, what do you think about, just generally speaking, I guess, about the consequences that are imposed on our leaders that fail? Um, and you know, what do you think in terms of an actual real way that we can help to lead people through a process of recovery, of restoration? Because what I see a lot of times is that you know, depending on what kind of, you know, even like the denomination, there's different rules and things like that, you know, depending on what denomination the event occurred in or whatever. But you know, what I've seen often, what I've seen a lot, is that will say, oh well, so and so had this issue, whether they fell into alcoholism or they, you know, they fell into, you know, whatever it was. Even if it's the case of a younger, maybe a younger minister, I've seen this happen where they weren't married, they had a girlfriend, and you know, didn't nobody knew, but for the past year they've been sleeping together, and then you know the leadership finds out, or you know, whatever the case may be, right? So find
mhm,
out that something's going on, and then what we say is, well, we're gonna, they always, you know, it's always sit the person down, and they're gonna go through a process of restoration. What I see a lot though is that 5 years later the person is still in the quote unquote process of restoration, and really they've been written off by the leadership because of a mistake that they made
mhm.
years ago. and we don't actually a lot of times know how to lead people through an actual process of restoring the individual, including restoring them to their, place of ministry, influence, whatever the case may be. Now, I get it. There's some sticky situations when it comes to some really, heinous things, when we're talking about crimes, when we're talking about different things of that nature. So for the sake of argument, not really talking about those things, talking
Mhm.
about situations where, somebody can be reasonably restored to their position or their, or ministry, even if it's not at that place, maybe it's somewhere else in the future. But what do you think about the way that typically, uh, you know, consequences and restoration is handled in church settings?
Mhm.
And if you just have any thoughts on maybe some healthy ways that we could do that, so that we're not, operating outside of God's grace.
Mhm.
I get that
Sure.
we're responsible for our actions, and the grace of God doesn't give us permission to sin, but at the same time, we are under a covenant of grace. And so, just do you have any thoughts on how we can operate in with these kinds of situations from a perspective of grace?
Yeah, definitely. I think um so obviously it's a multifaceted I could answer it and somebody's going to
Yeah,
be throw out some wild story that like, well, that doesn't line up.
exactly.
It's like, yeah, I get that. There's the anomalies here, but generally speaking, a big part of the problem is we're not trauma informed as a culture. And so
It's good.
we're not like, so pastors generally like have pastor A um has pastor B fall in some way, so he sends him to pastor like C way over somewhere else and doesn't even know what pastor C
Problem.
does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pastor C eventually says he's okay, he sends him back, bam, right? Maybe he gets restored, but then he does it again. And so
Hmm.
then it's like, well, that guy's such a sinner that he did it again. That's because Pastor A doesn't know his head from his butt. And doesn't want to take his time to know it. Like Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and then the church was built upon him. So
Wow.
absolutely people should be restored.
Yeah.
100%.
Hmm.
It, now you have to, and this it goes into what I just mentioned before. There's layers of what we have to figure out. We have to figure out if they even became a pastor for the wrong reasons in the first place. And if
Mm.
that's the case, then don't you, we should all be living fulfilled lives, doing serving our purpose, serving, our living out our destiny, our call. And that doesn't have to be being a pastor. And a lot of times people, pastors, and I know many that have fallen, and after I've worked with them and gotten to the root of it, they never wanted to be a pastor. Their father
Yeah.
called them to be a pastor. And at a young age, their father pronounced over them they would be a pastor. And so they
Wow.
became one, but they were miserable because they didn't ever want to be a pastor. They wanted to go be a rock star or something. I don't know, but they didn't want to be a pastor. So we have to establish, that's part of getting to know the person, the individual on a deeper level. Like what brought them to this place of doing the things that they did. And
Mm.
the whole staff needs to be not informed about that individual. Some things are private, but you have to have an understanding why we do the things we do. And we honestly, we don't as a whole. People just, I want to serve God. I got into ministry, but it's not fully understanding ourselves or what God has called us to. And I think when we're restoring people, it always about getting them in a place where they can hear from God again and like
Mm.
honestly hear, is God calling you to this role again? And there's so many great resources out there to do this, but most of the time, and I hate to say this, and I'm not bashing the church at all. I am part of the church, but most of the time the pastor and lead is trying to save himself. He's trying to like, I don't want to look bad because of what this guy did. So the punishment that's dictated is really about me or my staff not losing the
Mm.
respect of the congregation. And church is a business, and it's a machine, and you don't want to throw a cog in that machine like a human being. And
Right.
so it's not even about the individual, it's about how do we, you know, kind of save face in front of people. And
Wow.
part of that is real. I'm not saying it's not. I mean, somebody falls and does something horrendous that's on your staff, you have to answer for that as well. And I think it goes to, knowing individuals on a deeper level, knowing, helping a person be restored through knowing themselves even better. A person
Wow.
shouldn't be restored if they can't tell you why they were led to do what they did. They just shouldn't.
Hmm.
Otherwise, pure repentance, and penance based doesn't work. And so I'm going to make you pay this penance by sitting you down for 6 months. And then at
Right.
6 months, you got to come back in front of everybody and say you're sorry and repent. And then you're restored. That does not work. It just doesn't.
It
That's
doesn't. Yeah.
It's behavior modification, and behavior modification never works. And it doesn't. You got to ask yourself, are you trying to save face with your congregation or save the individual? And at some
Mm.
point, are we trying to help that individual
Yeah.
be saved? And I've seen a lot of pastors that have walked away from faith altogether because nobody took the time to like really pour into them and say, what can I do to help heal you? So I there's restoration of position, but I want to see you restored before God. And I want to
Hmm.
see you brought into fullness before God. And I want to see you walk out your destiny and fullness before him for you as an individual out
Yeah.
of love. God will cover the rest. And so I don't think, I think, systemically, I did a few podcasts on the Ravi Zacharias thing when it happened. And,
Mm.
it's the age old question of the board saving themselves and trying to make sure they don't lose donations and those types of things.
Yeah.
And I actually had a chance to bring one of his staff on my podcast and interview him. And I said, "Yeah, man, nobody knew." And he's like, "George, they did. Here's the thing. They did. Behind the
Wow.
scenes, they didn't want it public, but behind the scenes, they knew of three things that happened a few years leading up to his death and did
Wow.
not want to do anything about it because they didn't want their image to be tarnished." So that's a whole different ball game, bro.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
you don't
Absolutely.
want to you don't want to bite the hand that feeds, so you're not going to even do anything. And
Yeah.
so I think all of the I think it's good. I mean, for me, like part of, the next phase of my life is hoping to be able to coach and help, churches in situations where they have leaders that fall, somebody to come in and be like, let me just help point you in the right direction. Because church bylaws aside, they're necessary, but we're talking about an individual. And
Yes.
if you want them restored, there's a process in which we need to figure out how they ended up becoming a pastor and how they ended up doing the things that they did. And if they don't understand that fully and receive the healing that they need for that, they're either going to do it again or they're not going to live out their God-given, destiny
Hmm.
and fulfillment because they're going to be faking it.
Wow. Man, do you think that in a scenario that happens, and again, I'm not talking about anything where somebody's, breaking the law, that kind of thing, but
Yeah, I got you.
do you think in a scenario where somebody there is some kind of a moral failure that happens, and let's say the person confesses, the leadership finds out about it, do you think that if it's not a public incident where it's not publicly known, do you think that it should be handled internally, like without it becoming like? Do you think that we should make steps to um, protect the, let's say, the reputation of the person, uh, if possible? Like, so
Mhm.
not intentionally exposing it to, let's say, the congregation. Say, assume we're talking about a church, expose it to the congregation if it's not already public. Do you think that it's something that should be worked at, where it's kind of more handled among the leadership, and maybe some outside things are done, and maybe some things happen? But how important do you think it is? Again, we're talking about an individual,
Hmm.
so we're talking about somebody who matters, who we're not trying to just hopefully just throw this person under the bus and whatever. But what do you think about that? Like, as far as
Hmm.
protecting the reputation of the person as much as possible while lead them through that restoration process. I know sometimes it's not possible because they've done things that has become very public or whatever.
Hmm.
So in that case, I think you don't have a choice but to deal with it publicly. But what do you think about, do you think that's an important aspect of restoration, that if it's possible, guarding the reputation and dignity of the person? Or do you think, yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of public shaming for the sake of public shaming.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of, and I honestly feel like it's a protection to the congregation because you're
Hmm.
going to have a lot of people that are immature there that, you know, they're looking for any reason to not trust or not whatever. And so you protect the congregation, but you also, yeah, you protect the person. Obviously, I'm not talking about sexual things that somebody's a
Right.
sexual danger to someone, but
Right.
no, why publicly shame someone? Now you got to be able to stand on your process of restoration though. And that's
Hmm.
where it gets tricky. And so if one day it becomes public knowledge and people are like, why wasn't this? Then you have to be able to
Yeah.
stand on what you did in order to
Yeah.
restore this person. Um, I see a lot of stuff on Twitter from a couple different people that their sole mission is to tear down churches, and I only listen just because I want to hear what they have to say. But
Hmm.
this one woman really has this good point that the whole DNAs, do not disclose agreements that churches have people sign. Yeah, that's a whole different level of like deception where
Hmm.
someone who does something and we put it, they can't discuss disclosure on this. That's different. Where I want to be clear, you said not a crime, not a
Right.
danger,
Yeah.
and not because everybody, things can get twisted where I don't want it to get twisted. I'm not saying, some things shouldn't be disclosed to your church.
Right.
If a person has done something especially sexual, and once again, I don't necessarily mean, sleeping with his fiance before they got 2 days before they got married, but
Right.
you get the point.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, in those more, I call them, even though it seems like they happen a lot, but those more extreme circumstances where, yeah, where it's somebody that has, person with a leadership position, that they were a sexual predator or something like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
Obviously, that's
exactly.
that's a different situation. And unfortunately, what we've seen happen far too often is that, like what you were talking about earlier, kind of defending the status quo or keeping the business of the church rolling,
Hmm.
has been more important to the people involved, to the powers that be. That's been more important than actually help, caring for the individual who was wronged, who was hurt, who was,
Yeah.
whatever. And not to, yeah, I mean, there was a whole a whole denomination that just went through, and they're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
going through this really
They
intense.
will. They will be for a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I appreciate the leadership that's there now, that is, taking the steps necessary to, to clean house. I think from the little that I know about the situation, I appreciate the steps that are being taken now, but it's so after the fact, and how many people were just hurt because because of a a culture of, like you mentioned earlier. Well, actually, you were talking. I think you're talking about something different earlier, but a culture of, this person messed up. We found out about it. Rather than expose the whole thing and bring, whatever, bring everything out in the open, let's just move this person somewhere else. But it's not dealt with. And then
Right.
what happens? The
Right.
person probably is going to end up doing it again. And so now, 20 years later, or whatever it is, you end up with a huge scandal, where it's like, if you would have just done the hard thing from the beginning and dealt with that, the right way, if you dealt with that biblically and you dealt with that where you weren't focused on, you know, like protecting the people who did who started the problem, but you cared about the life of the person who was impacted by
Yeah,
this,
absolutely.
then,
Yeah.
we don't end up with the whole thing kind of
Mhm.
crashing down.
Well, just a good example is, say you got a leader that, is a recovered alcoholic, and um, you find out that the church finds out that, on his days off, he started drinking again, and
Mm,
it's starting to get out of hand. I don't think that's
mm,
necessary to put him in front of, your 1,500 person congregation and be like, this sloth has started to consume alcoholic beverage. I don't think that's
yeah,
necessary.
100%. Yeah.
But by the same token, if you just shift it, send them off to a different congregation, like, here's your punishment. We're not going to tell anybody, but we're going to send you over here
Right.
because now you
I
lost.
like that.
If you're one of those congregations that has
Yeah.
many things, that's wrong too, because you haven't helped him. He's just going to go there. Now he feels guilty because he started drinking again. He's not going to stop because you punished him. He's going to drink more
Hmm.
because he feels shame. You've just made that problem worse. Now he ends up stealing from the church fund to go drink one night, and it becomes exposed, and they're like, why didn't somebody tell us? That's
Mm,
then that's like, yeah, somebody should have done something there. Not
yeah.
because you needed to embarrass him in front of everybody, but because no one tried to restore him and heal
Yeah.
him. They just shipped him off. His drinking got even worse, and then he ended up stealing. And I say that because that's an actual story that I heard at a recent addiction conference I went to, where a guy said that's what happened to him. He got caught drinking, and they moved him. He actually got caught 2 or 3 times, and they just kept moving him, but no one tried to help him. And
Wow.
eventually he got caught doing something even stupider, and then it became like, okay,
Yeah.
we we all got to answer for this.
Yeah. I love what you said earlier, man, about when you mentioned Peter and how he denied Jesus 3 times, and then he became the one that Jesus said, "We're going to
Yeah.
build my church on this guy."
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really cool, and it made me think about what you said just now. Kind of brought me back to that. It's like I love that scene on the beach after Jesus has raised from the dead, before he ascends back up to the Father, and when there's that scene at the end of the book of John where he's just talking with Peter, and he's asking those questions. Peter, do you love me? He says, you know that I love you. He says,
Yeah.
well, feed my sheep. And I just look at that as that moment. I just look at that as that restoration process where Peter, this guy who denied Jesus, and then
Hmm.
Jesus died, and then like throughout this whole thing, and now Jesus came, he rose from the dead, and he's been there. They've been kind of seeing him, not seeing him. But then in that passage of scripture, it's like Peter and the disciples kind of not knowing what to do next, they went back to fishing. So
Hmm.
they're out there fishing, and then Jesus kind of calls them out. They have that whole thing, catching the fish, all that stuff happens. But then it's like this really beautiful moment, I think, of restoration where Jesus is just kind of reacquainting Peter with what his identity is in the first place. And I think that was so cool, the way that you, even in this whole thing where you talked about, when somebody falls, start from that basic place of finding out, is this really who you are and what you want to be doing? Like, is this ministry thing, pastor, whatever this is, like, do you want to actually go back to this? Like, is this something that you're actually called to? And then if that's a yes, then we can work to build it from there. And so I just
Hmm.
love that. I love that connection that you made. And it's kind of like, uh, you know, Peter, do you love me? And he's like, yeah, you know that I love you. He's like, well, feed my sheep. And so he's kind of like going through that process of dealing with the shame, kind of stripping back those layers of
Hmm.
shame and whatever else is there, failure. And it's like, you're you're not disqualified because of, you're not disqualified because of what you did, and of course, depending on what we're talking about, there's going to be restoration process. There's going to be a time to learn, maybe to go to counseling, maybe to go to therapy, maybe to, just whatever it might be. Maybe it's take a sabbatical, clear your head a little bit. Maybe it's get reacquainted with your wife, or, whatever it might be that's needed. But I do think that what you said is really, really powerful, because it's like, the identity of this person matters, even in, and maybe especially in this moment where they've been found out, they're dealing with shame, they're wondering
Mhm.
what tomorrow's going to be like, they're wondering, if they're ever going to be able to be restored or not. There's like this kind of cloud. And when we're so quick to kind of discard people because they've messed up, without getting to the heart of the issues there, then I think that we're doing a major, major disservice. Yeah, the person did something stupid, or yeah, they messed up, shouldn't have happened, whatever.
Mhm.
But kind of like getting to the reason, for the brokenness behind, what actually caused that to happen, and dealing with it on an identity level first, I think is really, really, powerful thing that you were talking about there.
Well, if you think about it, we literally are Peter in that scenario when we fall. There's
Yeah.
been, I'm sure there's been these moments where we denied him and denied him and denied him. And so we need that process of being reminded of who we are, and that restoration isn't just a ministry, it's to God. It's to God
Mhm.
himself. And
Yeah.
so ministry is just, I really started to think about this before, like when it came time for the sabbatical, because I found myself looking at my wife saying, I don't want to do this anymore.
Hmm. Wow.
Uh,
Wow.
That's the problem. Like,
Wow.
I don't want to do this anymore. And the board of directors being like, will you come back and do this again? And I'm like, no, I won't. And
Hmm.
really sitting with God and being like, I love God and I love people and I love helping people, but I don't have to do this one particular thing. I don't have to run these four houses and deal with the day in and day out of that. I mean, I love them and love that, but I don't, that's a lot of pressure and I don't need to do that. There's other things I can do, because here's the thing, we're never disqualified from God.
Hmm.
We can be disqualified from a church building and church
Come on.
staff, but we
Come on.
can't be disqualified from God. And in the end, we're called to love people and we're called to disciple and show people the Father and disciple them and all that. It's in a church or it's not in a church. We're talking about paychecks here. That's all we're talking about.
Yeah.
Really. You're
Yeah.
talking about where you get your paycheck from,
Hmm.
because what you do for God should never change. Should never change. And
Wow.
so, and unfortunately, that whole paycheck thing causes people to stop following God. And so we've got to do better at understanding people, um, from start to finish, what they went through, why they do the things they do, why they've done what they've done, why we do what we do. Why does, if you react poorly to someone telling you they've fallen, why? What's in you?
Hmm.
Because that's not Jesus. So
Yeah.
these are just
Yeah.
deeper questions. I think it's just easier to not have to think about. And every pastor, I did a whole series last year where I interviewed a bunch of pastors, and they basically all admit it. I just don't want to do that. I don't have time for that. And it's
Yeah.
like, but that's what we're called to.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing, man. It's funny. This is not this is what I imagined we'd be talking about.
I do
It
that to a
just
lot of people. I just kind of like, I did not think we were going to be talking about this. Sorry, we could start the interview now. Ask away.
Nah, man, it's all good. I think that's a conversation that I'm glad it was cathartic for me in a way. I've been it's just a lot of these things that we're talking about. It's like things that are on my mind a lot, and you're helping me process some things and understand some things. And so, hope it was good for other people listening too. But I know for sure
I hope so.
it was hugely beneficial for me.
That's
So I
where
appreciate it.
that's where I'm just right now, all I can do is talk about what I've learned over the last few months.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
a lot of it is things I've known or whatever, but this is me going forward. I just really want people to understand, and I mean this in a loving way, but I felt really let down by some people in my life when things happened.
wow,
And I've forgiven and worked through things and had open and difficult conversations. But I realized that it was my discipleship that taught them how to do what they did.
mm,
And so I was like, damn, I've really got to humble myself and
tough.
recognize, like, yeah, I can
Yeah,
be mad at them, but I'm the one who discipled them. So
wow,
I've got to do better. If I'm an advocate for mental health and I'm an advocate for helping people be restored, then how are the people closest to me so bad at this?
Mhm.
And I've
Wow.
and I've got I got to answer for that, not them. That's me. And so just trying to help other people like engage in conversations that people don't want to, because honestly they're time consuming and draining, and it's
Yeah.
just easier to ship our problems off to someone else. But
Mhm.
we can't keep doing that. Not if we want to. I think if the church body wants to grow and understand recovery better and understand how to help people, and ultimately, I think it's to understand ourselves better, because the one thing that scares me about one verse that scares me the most is Jesus saying, yeah, you've done all these things for me, but away from me, for I did not know you.
Mhm.
With the emphasis on you, I did not know you, meaning
Mhm.
you internally. Like, who are you? Like, sure,
Yeah.
you can go do deliverance and you can go speak words of prophecy and you can go love and whatever you're doing, but I don't know you as a person. You never came to me with what's really wrong with you. You just brushed over that and you want to go tell other people to turn to me, but you've never turned to me. That's terrifying. And it should be
Yeah.
terrifying to
Yeah.
every pastor out there.
Yeah. 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 No, it's oh man. Because the things that we do, so often what we do, or what people in the church world do, is we mistake, you know, somebody's platform or fame or voice or whatever for, we assume that if they're in that position, or if they have the following that they have or whatever. Now, I mean, anybody can have a huge following, on
Yeah.
Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is. And in the church world, we assume that if somebody is talking about Jesus, they've got a ministry behind them or something, and they've amassed this popularity or whatever that they have, then there must be the character to back it up, or there must be whatever it is.
Mhm.
And I come back to, the even on the other side, the gifts and the callings of God are without repentance. And so just because you have a ministry gift and you're able to get people free, you're able to preach a powerful sermon, you're able to heal the sick, you're able to, whatever you're able to do, I mean, that's all great. But it is crazy to think that we can do all of those things and not and not necessarily be connecting with God on an intimate and personal level, and we can keep that going for a season of time
Yep.
without having that, even that personal, just relational intimacy with God to back it up. And that is a scary thought,
Yeah.
because if
Yeah.
he's not the source for the ministry that's coming out of us, then I mean, I don't know what we're leading people into, but I don't think we can sustain it,
Yeah.
and there's no reason to sustain it.
I wonder if he's not the source, is he even your destination?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you for saying it like that. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
But really, right? Like, yeah, you're doing those things,
Absolutely.
but where are you what are you what are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
If is he even the destiny? Don't you want to be like him?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
because then the ministry itself almost becomes you almost begin to idolize the ministry itself. You begin to
oh
idolize the
yeah,
stuff that you're doing, and it becomes that becomes the goal. That becomes the thing. And the ministry, building the big ministry, is never the goal. The goal is Jesus. The goal is him. The goal should be him. and and
always.
and as we're going after him, yeah, we're going after him, and because he loves people so much, we're helping people get free, we're helping people get saved, we're helping people get healed, we're helping people come into wholeness, we're helping people do these things. But he's the goal. So he's
Yeah,
the as you said, he's the source and the destination. And when we
absolutely.
yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, he's supposed to be anyways. So,
Yeah, supposed to be. One more
yeah.
question for you, man.
Yeah, dude.
And it might seem like I'm switching things up, but you mentioned something earlier, and it's been in my head ever since. You were talking about how, there were when you were kind of going through some stuff, and people around you didn't necessarily know how to respond to what you were
Mhm.
going through, so they went into hiding. And so I just wanted to ask you this question:
Yeah.
what's a better response for somebody that's on the other side of it? So somebody that maybe They're aware of something going on in somebody's life, or maybe there's somebody who's talking to them about things that are going on in their life, and they don't know what they can offer this person, or they don't know, they don't feel equipped. Maybe it's a situation that they don't have any experience in of their own, and they're not sure what to do. I'm not talking about people who don't want to help, people who want to help and they have
Yeah, of
compassion,
course.
but because they don't know what to do, they hide for fear of, I don't want to say something that's going to make it worse, or I don't want to mess this up. What do you think is a better response, just as something some practical things that we
Mhm.
could learn how to do with people that we might not have the answers for, but we want to help, and we want a better alternative to hiding from them
Yeah,
because we don't know how
yeah.
to deal with it. Yeah.
Um, so great question. Um, it's interesting. You know that the number one technique for preventing suicide, do you know what it is?
uh Talking to somebody, I would.
It's to ask directly, are they thinking of killing themselves?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the number
Yeah.
one way to prevent a person from doing it. People say things like, "You're not thinking of killing yourself, are you? You're okay, right?" Stuff like that. And
Yeah.
ultimately, people, it's a, and let me think, I can be too aggressive, so I'm going to say this nicely. Um, it's really our own insecurities that prevent us from doing what we're supposed to do. Not,
Yeah.
we're not worried about offending the other person. We're not worried about making them do something. We don't want to ask something that we feel stupid at. We're not comfortable. It's called
Mm,
passive confrontation, and we're not
mm,
comfortable doing that. And so, the number one thing you can do when somebody is struggling is say, "How are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you?
yeah.
What can I do for you?" And spend time with them.
Mm,
I No one was asking me how I was doing. No one was literally like, there maybe the indirect ways, hey, yeah, things will get better, or, but to look at a person eye to eye and say, I know you just went through some horrible shit, and I can't
yeah.
imagine what that was like.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
How are you doing today? Right? Simple,
Yeah.
simple, direct questions from the heart when you have time to do it. Don't ever
Yeah.
be, if a person is struggling, don't ever let on that you got 100 things to do and you're in the middle of doing something, but hey, real quick, can I do something for you? No, nobody
Mm,
struggling is going to be like, yes, please stop what you're doing because I am so important.
yeah.
That's a
Like,
whole
no,
different
I'm good.
person. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's no, I'm good.
Yeah.
So it's like, listen,
Wow.
I've dedicated some time to be with you today. How are you
Wow.
doing? What can I?
Yeah.
So it's just simple, direct questions with unabated time for the person, the ministry of presence. That's
Yeah.
all I really wanted. And I didn't have a lot of people doing that.
Wow. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, being present with people. I love that you said. I love the practicality of that. Just asking those direct questions. Um,
Direct is always better. I mean,
yeah.
a direct question is, I mean, I know that we want to think it's going to make them feel worse, but it's not.
Yeah,
It's
I
not.
I think that that is in a lot of people's heads. It's like, if I ask this person, it's kind of like, well, if I ask this person if they're thinking about hurting themselves, or if they're thinking about, suicide, like, if they're not, then am I putting that thought into their head? And it's like, no, like, it's
No.
that's not what's going on. Just ask, like,
Hmm.
just be bold enough, like, hey, I need to make sure, I need to make sure
Honestly,
before, like.
it's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite. It doesn't put the thought in their head. It may make them be like, "Oh crap, I need to like straighten up." People are thinking that about me. Like, "Wow, I'm not really
Oh
that
yeah.
bad. Hey everybody, I'm okay." For real. And so even if you're like going to a person like, "Hey, how are you? Are you doing okay? Can I do something for you?" If it's not going to make them do worse, it may be like a wake up call to say, I must be showing that I'm doing way worse than I am. No,
Hmm.
I'm okay. It
Yeah.
actually works opposite. So
Yeah.
and stay consistent, you know, stay,
Yeah.
you know, it's the fruit of the spirit, right? Stay faithful, stay consistent. If you
Yeah.
listen, I'm gonna come back over tomorrow at 3 o'clock to check on you again. And damn
Mhm.
well show up at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
If you tell
That's
some
awesome.
my spiritual father that I had years ago, he's since passed on to be with the Lord, but he used to teach me, I would say things like, "Yeah, I'll give you a call." And he would be like, "When?" Later this week, when? I don't know. It's a passive thing. He was like 35 years older than me. I'm like, yeah, later today. Tuesday at 12 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Now I know when to look for your call. Be a man of your word,
Wow.
George. Be a man of
Wow.
your word. And so it stuck with me. But the reality is like if I'm struggling and you tell me you're going to check on me and you don't, do you realize that's going to make me feel worse?
Right. Yeah.
If you tell me, George, I'm going to check on you again tomorrow at 3 o'clock, that tells me that you care about me so much so you're planning the next time to check on me.
Right.
I must be important.
Yeah.
At least important enough to you that you're going to schedule a time to check on me.
Yeah.
But the inverse is true, and you don't show up, then
Right.
yeah, that also shows me that I'm not worth anything. So
Mhm.
stay faithful to your
Yeah, I mean,
word,
like,
man.
yeah, put that in your phone, you know, like put some kind of
Yep.
however you remind yourself of things, but give yourself a calendar, like some alarm that's going to go off,
Yeah.
something because it really does matter. And sometimes that's like all not all, but that's what somebody in the moment, what somebody really needs is, as you said, just the presence of somebody who they know cares for them. Because
Hmm.
when you get, I mean, when you get into that place where you're just kind of feeling surrounded by darkness and you're not sure which way's up or down and you're overwhelmed by things, you can start to feel very, very alone in that. And when you just have that person that's willing to kind of get down in the trench with you, so to speak, and to show them that like you are somebody who cares. It's not true that nobody, people have this thought like nobody would care if I'm gone or whatever. Like that's not true. But let me show it to you. I can talk to you about how, your family is going to be upset, your family's going to be this, your family's going to, that, but I can also show it to you right now by,
Hmm.
by being here with you because you matter to me, whether or
Right.
not you're articulating all that or not, but just that closeness of and that willingness to just sit with somebody when they're going through something is a big deal.
Yeah, it really is. And let me just add this. Obviously, as Christians, we pray for people. Be cautious in praying for people, like and putting your expectations on them to act a certain way. Like I've had
Mhm.
friends that had cancer and they hated people praying for their healing because the person would be like, "You feel better, right? You feel better in your area." It's like, no, I actually don't. Now I feel like I let you down because of your freaking prayer.
Yeah.
So it's like we got to pray for people in whatever fashion you pray, but don't be like, are you feeling better? Is it did prayer work? That's your expectations of the prayer. Don't add to them that they need to act a certain way after you're done praying some real big supernaturally laced prayer. I'm all about
Mm.
that too, but when
Yeah.
you're dealing with somebody emotionally, you don't want to put them in a place where they feel like, I guess I feel the sadness
Hmm.
gone. I'm better. You just got
Yeah.
to be cautious, man. Don't
Yeah.
put your expectations on them.
Yeah, that reminds me of I was listening to Randy Clark, and he was obviously huge healing ministry. They see people healed all over the world and
Yeah,
healed of
global
all kinds
global
of
missioning.
yeah, yep. Yep. Yeah. Just all kinds of things. He was talking about an experience where this woman didn't get her healing, and they'd actually spent hours with this woman. Doing communion together, praying, just believing and doing all the stuff that they normally do, and they get a lot of breakthrough in
Yeah,
healing. But this woman, she had cancer, and she was very, very close to death, was the prognosis. And they spent hours with this woman and didn't see healing happen. And when they got done, when they were wrapping it up, their response to her was, uh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, we did everything we know to
Yeah.
do, and in other words, they put it back on themselves. They didn't put it on the person, because that person could have gone out from there if they weren't careful.
Yep.
That person could have easily gone out and said, "Well, something's wrong with me. God healed all these other people,
Yeah.
but I didn't get my healing. So I guess God didn't want to heal me." And they could have
Yeah.
easily gone out with that kind of mentality. So I just think that when it comes to ministering to others,
Hmm.
don't put your whatever, your,
Yep.
whether it's insecurity, your expect, don't put the weight of that on that person and make that
Exactly.
person go out and deal with the weight or the shame of whatever that thing was,
Hmm.
because we're doing them a disservice. So any way that you can, I mean, kind of flip the script, back on yourself, or you carry the weight of that ministry that you're trying to give to this person, and don't make them leave. Make sure they're not leaving feeling, like they're carrying something extra
Yeah.
that's gonna weigh them down.
Yep. I've read that
It's
story
a big deal.
before. I read a lot of Randy Clark stuff, and yeah, it's a
Oh
great
yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do. I mean, I'm all about that stuff. So I don't mean it in a way that
Yeah,
I'm not. I just mean
absolutely.
literally don't do that to someone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely, man.
cool.
Absolutely. Bro, I appreciate you so much. Thanks so much for your
Yeah.
time and everything. And would you give a your own kind of plug for the Uncovery before we go? Just what it
Hmm.
is in your words, and the heart behind it, and who you think should read it, and however you want to handle that, and let us know where we can go to find that and some other resources.
Sure.
Maybe mention the podcast, whatever, anything currently that you're working on. I know you mentioned another book and some other things.
Yeah.
Where can we go to get those resources?
Yeah, excitingly, we finished the second book, which is the Uncovery devotional, Rethinking Recovery 365 Days. And
Cool.
I just got the cover
Sounds
art
good.
today. It's pretty cool. It won't be out till later this year, but
Hmm.
it's the follow up to the Uncovery, which is, um, really the stories of the last 15 years of my life. My wife and I, and the ministries that we run here in the inner city of Tampa, and just the things that we've learned about helping healing trauma through community and living in community, and the way that you can walk with people through some of the most challenging things, yet do so in a way that brings honor to God, and honor to their lives, no matter what the outcome is. I always say, I think more people die in the book than live in the book, because it's a reality of
Wow.
life. And I think everyone should read it, if you're a Christian or a non Christian, because there's hope in it, whether you're the person struggling. And there's some new ideas if you're the person that's leading uh, other people, whether it's mental health issues or suicidal thoughts or addictions. Um, I believe that recovery is for everyone. And I also believe that recovery is the gospel. It's the gospel of
Mm,
Jesus Christ. It is the life saving gospel. And I believe that it is going to bring revival if we as a church could really grab a hold of not being afraid to not know answers, and not being afraid to answer when the person we're trying to help doesn't make it, because no one
mm,
thinks everybody bats 100. No one thinks that. So as a church, we've got to learn to be okay not batting 100, and or at least, acknowledging it, maybe not okay with it, but not acknowledging it. So I
yeah.
really I really hope that leaders will read it, and I hope those that are struggling will read it, because it is a different take on things. I read a lot of recovery stuff out there, and there's nothing like this. And I don't just say that because I wrote it, but I wrote it because I wanted it to be different. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it really is. You can find it at on Amazon, and there's also the uncoverybook.com, where you can go and learn more about it. You can check out more about me at georgeawood.com, or the
Hmm.
tattooedpastor.com, same website. And yeah, I have a
I love that.
podcast. Yeah, right. I have a podcast, the Sober Truth Podcast, YouTube station, that the Sober Truth Podcast with George A. Wood, where you can see some of the people. We have big interviews coming up in the next few weeks. I'm interviewing Brian Head Welch from Korn,
On.
Brian Simmons, the author of the Passion Translation,
Yeah, man.
Timothy King, the author of Addiction Nation, uh, Ed Treat, the founder of Addiction in the Addiction Ministry up in Minnesota that I went to, that is just phenomenal, and just some just great people that we're doing some interviews with. EI the King, this Christian rapper that just did 13 years in prison and tells his story. So it's going to be a good season. So check it out.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, please
Yeah.
check that out. That sounds amazing. And I just want to add one more time, the Uncovery. I really, it's a game changer, man. I appreciate you guys so much. I know it was a labor of love. I know it wasn't
Yeah.
easy getting it out there. And
No.
man, you'll have to come back, and I'd love to
Yeah.
kind of talk about even the process of writing it and getting that
Yeah.
stuff out of you and into the world. I'd love to go down that road. That's what was in my notes for this discussion, to kind of ask you a little bit about that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
we
Sorry
went a
about
different
that.
direction. But no, not at all,
Yeah.
bro. It was
Yeah.
great. I really enjoyed it. That's ultimately my goal, is to have a living conversation. So it often goes a different direction than what I planned, and that's actually my favorite thing
Awesome, man.
to do.
I'll come
So
back anytime.
but yeah, we'll do it again. And but it is just a game changer, and I appreciate it so much. And I already know it's helped so many people. It's going to continue to help so many more. So just thank you, man.
Awesome.
Thank you for all you're doing.
I appreciate that, dude. This has been great.
Thank you, everybody. Bless you guys. Come back for another episode. You're the best.